into positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
Okay. Havana Syndrome. You have Havana Syndrome from listening to the podcast. Holy shit, you gotta go to a CIA doctor and get it checked out because your head's gonna explode. Have you guys heard about Havana Syndrome?
Oh, yeah. Jake, you're here.
Yeah. Why? Did you guys hear something just now?
Yeah, this is crazy sound. It felt like, I don't know, I felt like I was kind of coming undone.
Yeah.
Isn't that the voice that goes over the loudspeakers at the southern border?
Yeah, it tells people not to come in or they'll get Havana Syndrome.
Yeah.
They'll get shot with the microwave.
You're going to get little Havana Syndrome.
Hello, everyone. Welcome
hangover.
to today's episode of Pod Damn America. You're going to be having a good time after you hear us talk about the things we're going to talk about today. I keep reading about Havana Syndrome, and the only thing I can think about is Ricky Gervais on Extras going, "Are you having a laugh? Are you having a laugh?" And it sounds like that's what Havana Syndrome
Are
is.
you having a laugh?
Yeah. But
It's a fair question.
CIA thing. Hello, I'm Jake Flores. Alex Patak is here.
Hello, welcome to Miami.
Anders Lee is here.
Anders Lee here.
And we all have Havana Syndrome. So if you're not extremely online and you haven't heard about this thing, or I guess it's not even just a Twitter thing, it's like in the real news.
They passed a law.
They passed a fucking law in the Senate, yeah.
I don't know what
Mind
the fuck
gun
it
is
says,
in the news.
A bunch of
Yeah.
CIA people who are stationed in Cuba are claiming that their heads have been microwaved. And
But very gently and in a way science can't explain.
yeah, so everyone has this mysterious... There's an actual term for what is actually happening, which is Munchausen syndrome, which is when you become really paranoid that you have a disease, but it's unexplainable, and there's no actual effect on your body. And it sounds like all these people just have that, but it's been given the name Havana Syndrome and sort of like given these symptoms that are impossible for anyone to prove actually happened. Like, I just heard a buzzing in my head, and now
Yeah.
No, I think I had this once. I had a job when I was 23. I got this job where you set up fake websites. I don't think I've talked about this on here before. And I just developed this phenomenon where I thought I was peeing myself all the time.
I have that.
Like I'd swear like I felt like warm water going down my leg at like 9 a.m. on a Monday. It's
whenever I smoke weed, I get that thing where
yeah.
you're sitting
It's
in a camping chair and you're like, did I pee? Does everyone know I peed?
Right, you know the Soviet bloc is behind it, but you can't explain how.
Yeah.
And I was convinced that I had like spine damage from doing a moving job before that job, but I kept going to all these doctors and they were like, you, I guess, just have ghost pee. Medically, this is ghost pee.
You didn't.
Castro was behind this.
There's also like, I feel like people will just get sick from traveling. It's pretty common. Especially, this isn't even intercontinental really, but, you know, international. Like, I traveled to Britain once and had all the burgers there are well done, like by law. And for some reason, the well doneness of the burger, it's supposed to, you know, cure the sickness, but I think it sometimes does the opposite. Made me sick.
There's so much in burger medicine we've yet to explore.
You know,
Yeah. Is it because
traveling, eating bad, you know, food, British food,
Well,
can
it's
make you
stress.
sick.
I mean, to extrapolate more on this random, very likely unrelated story, like if you just have anxiety about things, your body will just start making up stuff. Yep. And say what you will about the CIA, they're probably stressed about a wide variety of things. I think it's very likely.
Yeah,
Anyway, legally, they're being shot with a socialist ray gun that's everywhere in the world and can't be explained by science.
Well, this is 100% something we tried to do, I'm sure, in the 60s or something to people in Havana.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's what's kind of funny about this, reading about it today back to back with like the border stuff that we're going to talk about, because we're going to talk a little bit about the smart wall and how they have like microwave cameras that they use to scan you and your body like a Terminator when you're trying to cross the border, so that they can see, you know, how many fillings you have and then identify your body later or whatever. Like, we would do this to someone else, no fucking problem. But then, like, anyone in the United States government gets a headache and they're like, it's a fucking communist ray gun. They're microwaving my head through the window.
We have the finished version of this gun and they make you use it at the airport every time you go through.
Right.
You know that box where they're like, we don't really know what's happening in here, but here's a vest.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if it's a little posh, I think, for a spook to be like, oh, I went through a radiation thing and now my head hurt. Your head's gonna hurt a little bit. It's part of life in the modern world. Is you get zapped with radiation all the time. Your phone is doing wildly experimental shit, just shooting neurons through your leg next to your dick at all times. We all have radiation. You're not special that you got your head microwaved a little bit.
Sir, you have 5G poisoning. Keep undermining the ambassador or whatever you're up to.
My mom was right. You shouldn't stand in front of the microwave.
Yeah, you are the microwave.
Stand in front of the microwave.
You'll get Havana Syndrome. My mom used to yell at me, don't stand near the microwave. You'll get Havana Syndrome from it.
It's going to make you Cuban, Jake.
Yeah.
I used to want to stand in front of it because I thought there's a possibility it could, give me powers.
Yeah, the powers are, you have to go to the hospital after that.
Yeah, you have cancer. Congratulations.
I looked into the history of this phenomenon, and like, it's all this old Cold War stuff where like one wacko scientist in the States started microwaving his own head, and he said it made him hear things, and they weren't like sounds you could hear outside of his head. It was like making him hear stuff in his head. So he went to Russia to talk to some other people, I guess some Russians that were also, he said he went to Russia and they had like this experimental lab set up where they just had a Russian guy in a bathtub of salt water, like a big tub, and they were shooting microwave rays at him, like, does it do hear things? Like, none of this has ever been concluded, but it is a thing. It's like an urban legend in the intelligence community that's been around forever.
Right. Well, this is only half of the news. The news is not that there is Havana Syndrome or, Havana Syndrome, quote unquote. The thing is they passed a bill for Havana Syndrome relief, which means, like, you never have to finish your homework again. If you're still in school listening to this, you just make things up, and they're real now. They're officially codified in law. Every sitting congressman voted for it.
Yeah.
Is there some way this will be a backdoor to giving the people of Cuba syringes? Somehow?
I think it will be a backdoor to a ground invasion of Cuba. That's where I'm putting my vote.
I think I want to eat one of these microwaved heads. I mean, is it cooked afterwards? Is it like a baked potato? Like you could stick a fork in it?
Heads.
We eat brains from other species, so it's probably tastes fine.
That's true.
I haven't.
You can get
a lot of fat and nutrients.
You go to
I went to this Korean restaurant where they gave you like the whole fish, like the head of the fish, and I didn't know you weren't supposed to eat that. I was like, I'm gonna try being cultured, and I bit the head off the fish, and everyone was like, why did you do that?
You ate a fish head like a circus freak.
It did not taste good. I felt bad and stupid. Everyone was mean to me.
Did you get fish head syndrome after?
I did in that I kind of wanted to barf for like a few minutes because it tastes very different than the rest of the fish, and I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah.
They eat sheep brain somewhere, don't they?
I think it's a Scottish thing. No, I'm thinking of haggis. If you go to a real fucking
Haggis.
like a real down food like taco truck, you can get like brain. But they're not. You're not. It's like
you can get brain at the taco truck if they're down for it.
Yeah, you can also eat some animal brains, but you can get brain.
The Brooklyn advice of the week is if they're down bad at the taco truck, they'll give you brain.
Yeah,
Getting brain at the taco truck because this tortilla slinger don't give no fuck.
Okay.
Yes, Anders.
All right.
We're segueing more into a rapping direction with the show. I've long been a proponent of that.
Okay, no, it's not. I thought it was going to be a deep screw thing, but it's still on robot yelling.
How many buttons do you have?
It's
Because over the Zoom, it never sounds like anything. It always sounds insane.
I've got a pedal I don't really understand that has a lot of different knobs on it. It makes different things come out. That was fucking brains. That's a crazy one. It sounds like a robot is yelling.
Well, hey, you know what is on the opposite end of the body from the brain? The foot.
The foot.
The foot. And there's a
The
guy.
answer is the foot.
That's right. You have 2 feet, but usually 2 feet. But there is a guy whose name is Foot, who just resigned as a U.S. envoy to Haiti. I don't actually know what an envoy is in relation to like an ambassador.
I think you're like the hype man. Right?
Okay. Yeah,
You
it's,
spread positive news
Right.
about your country.
which is hard to do right now if you're an American trying to give hype to Haiti. But they are actually, well, they're not happy in Haiti because all these people are being deported and sent back there, and they don't have the capacity for everybody because things are tough right now. But this guy resigned, and apparently his resignation letter is going around Haiti. People are reading it, dissecting it, and there's a joke that is going around is why has there never been a coup in the United States? What do you think?
Is there a punchline or?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought that was the whole
everybody's
joke.
Too busy getting head at the taco truck.
Yeah. Everyone has
because there's-
Havana Syndrome up there.
There's no U.S. embassy in the U.S.
I see.
See what I did?
That is pretty funny in its own way. In these dark times, gallows humor can be the blanket you need to get through the night.
You know, I mean, there was, according to some people in this country, there was almost a coup on January 6th.
Yeah.
Which I think I land more in the camp of it was a hilarious thing that was never going to go anywhere. But did you read
All of the extras from HBO shows were going to overthrow the government with guns.
Yeah. Did you guys read like the Sidney Powell thing that came out this week?
Nuh-uh.
So they've sort of declassified or whatever some communications that people had in the Trump administration about, you know, what was going on at the same time, not in relation to J6, but just during his whole thing where he was like, I'm going to stop the steal. And long story short, I mean, it sounds like there were people communicating in the government, possibly in relation to this plan that he had with his lawyer, where he was like, here's how it could work if we were to, prolong the fucking counting of the votes, and then yada yada yada. We declared de facto victory for Trump. So Trump had a plan with his lawyer, which was to get Pence to speak a certain type of language, and then go into because the vice president has to count the votes and all this shit. I don't know the fucking.
That's his special job. That's like the one thing he gets to do. He's like the prom queen of votes.
President of the Senate.
So I don't know fucking all the ins and outs of it's like, you know, complicated board game rules of the vice president has to do this and then bang a gavel or whatever. But essentially they had a plan related to Pence. And I was thinking about this and I was reading about J6 and I'm kind of joking. I'm kind of not when I say this. I think it's possible that Trump really was going to get away with kind of doing a 2000 style stolen election, but the QAnon people like just happened to show up on that day.
Fans, man.
And fuck it up for him, which is
can't do shit with these fans.
So funny. And no one will ever know for sure, but just as like a Seinfeld B plot thing that comes back around at the end of the story, it's so funny to imagine that they, thinking they were helping, like, fucked up his actual plan.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because we forget the Brooks Brothers riot in 2000, where they were doing the recount and people fucking stormed in suits, were Republican operatives, and stopped it from happening. That was an actually successful, I don't know if I'd call it a coup, but successful subversion of democracy. But anyway, so this guy, Daniel Foote, he resigns in a huff because this is a stupid policy. We're sending them back. This is just, you know, embarrassing that Biden spent all this time criticizing Trump on immigration and inhumane policies. And then you have these images of guys running around on horses or riding around on horses with whips in the fucking Spanish-American war hats, dispatching
You know them as cowboy hats.
Right. People seeking asylum, which is not against the law, and so he resigns. And the funniest part is the White House is like, well, look, this guy he had his job for a while. He didn't talk about any of this to me when he was doing his job. And they say that this is one State Department official says it is unfortunate that instead of participating in a solutions-oriented policy process,
ugh, love those.
Special Envoy Foote has both resigned and mischaracterized the circumstances. I don't know what he's mischaracterizing here.
We're having a great time. I don't know why you have to go out and disparage the United States Border Patrol in this situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a guy who had a distinguished career in diplomacy and, of course, probably a liberal imperialist in some way. But this is just a stupid policy, counterproductive. It's bad, and even people like him are calling it quits. So it's a new paradigm now because of it started, as we'll get into. Really started with Clinton. Some would say it started with Coolidge. But Trump really put things in a certain direction and shifted the paradigm in a way that so far doesn't look like Biden is willing to put things back in the box with immigration and inhumane treatment and the way.
No, it only
Cuba
goes in one
sanctions.
direction. It just goes up. It doesn't go back down ever. It's just a contest of who can crank it up more. But that guy is cool. Good. Quitting your job is cool.
Quitting your job is always cool.
Daniel Foote.
Yeah.
Open invitation to come on the podcast.
Get on LinkedIn, yo. You'll find another job.
We get a lot of our guests from LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It's the number one tool for professionals to connect. LinkedIn.com. Get your link today.
Yeah. That's where we got John McAfee. He was looking to be a podcast guest.
We actually got him on McAfee. He was trying to hack into our mainframe, and we found him, and we're going to delete him.
Well, you instead do our show.
Yeah. He tries to hack his own computer program to prove it's unhackable.
But he's on record saying it doesn't work. Like, none of it works.
It's all a ruse.
You think viruses are real? We're the viruses. You're the computer.
He just keeps doing the Agent Smith speech where he's like, the stink of it. Human beings.
It's the
Close your nostrils. Putting his fingers in your nose.
Mario got a new job on LinkedIn. He's
What's
being
this?
played by... Wait, I think I got it backwards.
Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt got a new job on LinkedIn. He's playing Mario in the new Mario movie.
Not Italian.
Everyone's pissed off about it because he's not Italian. Also,
Not Italian.
he's not good. He sucks. He's a weird Christian. Mario is not a Christian, I don't think.
I think he's probably Catholic.
They intended to book 2008 Chris Pratt, though. They weren't thinking. Because now Chris Pratt is, like, jacked and handsome and, like, he's been a movie star. They wanted, like, the guy who was homeless 6 months ago and plays, like, schlub characters. Which, actually, that's not really Mario either. Because Mario's a very competent human being. He's been to the Olympics with Sonic. Have you ever met Sonic?
Yeah. He's fat and competent. I mean, honestly, I could see where they were going with, like, a Chris Pratt type. Because he's got a little pot belly. But he can somehow jump.
It's the fucking Hollywood brain thing where you're just like, we need a big name. Who are we putting on this? Zendaya's busy.
My favorite part of the Mario movie announcement cast thing is much overlooked by Twitter. Sebastian Maniscalco is playing a character I've never even heard of. And I play a lot of video games, so that's the thing. It must be like a new character or something. But
what is it?
Spike. He's playing a character named Spike from Mario.
See, I bet that's like probably like it's not the bullet with the face, but it's probably something that you like have seen a million times. But you're like that surely doesn't have a name.
Yeah, you just
why
don't
would
know
that have a name?
Yeah, he's playing Pokey, the thing with the weird Pokey head. Well, I know Pokey's name. I don't know who Spike
Jim
is.
Gaffigan is Dry Bones.
Wait a minute. Hold on, though. Sebastian Maniscalco is, like, extraordinarily Italian.
Yeah.
Why isn't he Mario? He loves jumping and stuff?
He's Italian-American. It's different.
It's
a whole other vibe. He'd have to be a Waluigi.
He could be that, too. Anything.
You know what I mean, though? Like, he has a whole different energy than Mario.
But, I mean,
Sebastian?
Yeah.
Chris Pratt has a closer... I'm not saying it's the correct casting, but Sebastian Maniscalco has, like, what the Japanese call warugi, or malice and intent.
It would be so funny, though, if Mario's voice was like Dice Man or Maniscalco or something that was just like, hey, bitch!
Yeah. Well, that really gets to the core of the whole problem is all these people are going to be talking, like Seth Rogen is Donkey Kong. What is... Like, Donkey Kong doesn't talk. Don't put a funny guy as Donkey Kong.
Does he like that? He makes like Tim Allen noises?
Yeah.
You know he steals women. He like just grabs and takes women.
Princess
and that's
Peach?
Okay? Mainly her, but
yeah,
others,
that was a phase. And then after that he reformed himself and
he steals women.
had a family with the little Kongs, Diddy. What
I mean, he's literally...
So what I've...
Our theme music is his music.
Right.
So
yeah,
I'm
we
pro
can't
Donkey
really
Kong.
trash him, unfortunately. But,
He steals women.
Yeah, well... do we know that Peach didn't want to...
Oh no, we are not going into
I
this.
think that's
I'm just saying,
what's going on
I
there.
know someone who's doing research on the Vikings. And,
Donkey Kong apologist.
The Vikings are often portrayed as doing the same thing, stealing women, but new research suggests that the
Kind
women
of the
actually...
Donkey Kongs of their time.
Right. New research suggests that in Great Britain, a lot of the men were smelly and unattractive, and had short hair. And then these Vikings come in with long hair, they bathe, and the women are actually into it. And
So
They
they
have
go
really
with
good
it.
muscles from killing Englishmen.
What you're
Right.
suggesting is that Princess Peach and Mario are hanging out, and she's kind of bummed out because he never showers. He hangs out in the sewer all day. He's gross. And then this Donkey Kong fellow shows up, who is, he's an animal, but he's wearing a tie. He's
Smells like
groomed.
bananas.
Smells like bananas, and he's well-groomed, and he's strong, and he demonstrates his worth. And so what she does to alleviate the situation is sort of go like, oh, no, he's taking me. But in reality, she's like, Donkey Kong, let's get the fuck out of here.
Yeah,
Throw barrels at him.
Guys.
Get him with a barrel.
that's what I think is happening. I don't think she... who would you rather be with, Donkey Kong or Mario?
Donkey Kong is a
in
Chad.
terms of
Mario's a
species-
virgin.
Right.
Mario is again a wonderful man who's done so much for this community.
He's kind of a cuck. He's constantly getting cucked by both Donkey Kong and Koopa.
Right.
Right, and the Koopa part of it is like a darker side if she's going with them, because he's a bad guy. He's not a good guy like Donkey Kong in like a moment of crisis. Like he has like stocks and bad companies and stuff.
I guess so, yeah. He doesn't really do anything other than just sort of run around with her.
Right, well, he has a castle, and if you don't work all day and are exorbitantly rich, what does that mean? Stock trader, investment portfolios, growth accounts. You're affording your large lava skull castle. You're bringing women there and being like, yeah, it's no problem. I got a few of these.
Okay, but Princess Toadstool and the Toad people also have a castle. The only person who doesn't have a castle here is Mario, who lives in the sewer canonically.
Right. Well, does he live? I thought he just works there.
Where does he live? Show me where he lives.
He has girlfriends, and he lives with them. He's got a really good heart, is what a lot of people don't know about him. He's been to the Olympics with Sonic. He's Sonic's friend.
Yeah.
Twice. Twice.
He parties a lot, Mario Party, and he has, fun, active partying.
The way they party, by the way, not even what you or I would identify as a party, the things going on in that situation.
Yeah. Do you guys want to have a party at my place where the party is that we each try to inflate a giant balloon looks like our heads as fast as possible?
He can't stop gaming. That's it. Even when he's trying to relax, he needs to compete. He's an ultra competitive guy.
I come over to Jake's house. He's got like an 1800s mine car. We're supposed to move back and forth across the room.
Dude, I look at you. I'm like, you like to party? Like
I didn't bring any drinks.
Yeah.
I didn't know you liked to party.
You need both hands.
I thought we were going to do heroin. What's going on? What is this?
But apparently this movie is not going to be live action. Just to clarify things.
That would be it would be insane if this was a live action movie with
Well, they made one in 1990 with John Leguizamo and Bob Hoskins.
Yeah, it was awesome. Leguizamo, by the way, not Italian, but
right.
It's okay.
He fits under the diaspora mold. He'll just go for those roles they'll give it to him. It's like a reverse Al Pacino situation.
I guess it's fine if you're POC to play a white person, but not vice versa.
Sure, that's just taking the power back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
does that work?
Mario, too, is a really big figure to capture.
Yeah. I think he was Luigi. Bob Hoskins was Mario.
Yeah.
When Mario goes down, like, the big green tunnels, is that crossing a border in some way?
Yeah.
Ooh. Good question.
There's
it
like
can be.
There's an evil. That's what Bowser is trying to stop.
He's ice. Bowser is ice.
He's the Department of Homeland Security. Well, hold on. I think I can do this. So Koopa, the original turtle monster dragon thing, is Border Patrol. He's been around for a long time.
Yes.
Now, when something external to the story of the Mushroom Kingdom occurred that was spun as sort of a nationalistic, jingoistic disaster porn thing, occurred right around 1992, 3, 4, something like that. That's when they formulated a new organization that rolled out Bowser as he's like CBP, and then Ice is his children, Iggy, Ziggy, Roy, Lenny. They're all named after like musicians, except for Larry.
I do passionately feel like the Bowser children are Fash, even more so than Bowser himself. And that's something we'll be getting into later
no doubt.
In great detail, but not now.
Yeah, because they're like evil punks, which is, like they're fascists.
They're like skinheads. But the thing is, too, and if you look at the technology Bowser has, it's light years above King Koopa's. And it reflects the bloated budgets. And all this money's going to Bowser. All this money's going to his tanks that float with their skulls on it, or his face.
Yeah,
have to have his face on it?
That smiley clown thing he flies around in is like one of these ghost drones they use at the border. You imagine you trying to cross the border and then there's like a bouncer fucking flying thing with some asshole border patrol agent in it.
We didn't get to talk about this on the episode because I didn't want to sidetrack the guest, but when he was talking about helicopters for a while, the helicopters are the loudest goddamn thing. If you don't live in a city, if a helicopter gets like within 500 feet of you, it's all you can hear. It's fucking terrifying.
Yeah. When he talks about the helicopters, imagine it's the Bowser copter from the end of
Right.
SNES Mario.
That will ground it for many of our listeners.
Yeah. All right. Today we are talking to Todd Miller, writer and journalist, writes about the border, and we're talking about the border because of stuff that happened this week. Enjoy our interview. Hello, we are now joined by journalist and writer Todd Miller. You might know his Substack, The Border Chronicle. I just started reading it. It's really good. He's also the author of Build Bridges, Not Walls, Empire of Borders, Storming the Wall, and Border Patrol Nation. Welcome to the show, Todd.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you here. Okay, so I guess the reason that I wanted to have you on the show and talk a little bit to you is about kind of wanted to ask you some questions about the context surrounding this recent thing where, you know, the discourse of the last week has been about the border and DHS and CBP. I'm trying to pull, I guess, the lens back from, oh my God, there were fucking border agents with whips whipping Haitians and stuff, to how did we get here? You know, what's the whole story? So I guess if we could start a little bit with, can you tell us a little bit about the origins of Homeland Security? I know you've written a little bit about it.
Sure. Well, Homeland Security really hasn't been I'm talking about the Department of Homeland Security. It really hasn't been around for that long. It was created in 2002, implemented in 2003. It's interesting if you go back to those days. You even have conservatives like Peggy Noonan complaining about the word homeland, like saying this. Why are we using this word homeland? It comes from Germany in the 1930s, but Homeland Security, like the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, was gigantic in terms of the border and what is on the border and how the border is today. The U.S.-Mexico border, and I could actually talk about other facets of the U.S. border, but we'll focus on the U.S.-Mexico border for today. Anyhow, so if you look at the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, two agencies were created. One was called Customs and Border Protection, CBP. CBP is the parent agency of the U.S. Border Patrol. So when you see the Border Patrol on horseback at Del Rio, Texas, that's basically CBP. And then another agency that was created was ICE, or Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So these two agencies, even though the Border Patrol existed before then, the Border Patrol was created in 1924. But those two agencies, in their most modern form, were made in 2003, and they had, because of the 9/11 and the post 2001 and the Homeland Security element, they all had their priority mission is counterterrorism. And if you look at CBP, its priority mission is stopping terrorists and weapons of mass destruction from crossing the U.S. border. So what has happened since then is that there have been no such things crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. There have been no terrorists as recognized by the U.S. government that we know about that have crossed the U.S. border, but budgets, because of that mission, just skyrocketed. So if you follow the budgets going over the years, when George W. Bush in started his presidency in 2001, it was $4.5 billion budget for border and immigration enforcement. By the time he ended, it was $15 billion. And now when Trump started, it was 20 billion, and when Biden started, it was 25 billion. So you can just see there's been incremental growth of this border apparatus, and those budgets and their annual budgets numbers that I'm giving, they translate into, for example, Border Patrol agents. Now there's nearly 21,000 Border Patrol agents that went up from 8,000 in 2001. There's even before Trump took office, there were 650 miles of walls and barriers along the 2,000-mile U.S.-Mexico border. Now there's nearly 750 miles. There's all kinds of technology from surveillance cameras, high-tech surveillance cameras, and drone systems, and aerostats, which are tethered surveillance balloons that are deployed on the U.S.-Mexico border, all part of this system. So when people come to the border, this is what they're running up against. So what you're seeing in Del Rio right now is basically one version of the border, as this large group of Haitians who have arrived at the border is kind of crashing into that.
Sure, yeah. And so I guess one thing I kind of wanted to focus on is something that I think needs to be maybe a little demystified for Americans, is that there's this politicization sometimes of the border issue as if it's like a partisan thing. Like on Twitter, you see all these like liberals kind of like, how could this happen? We have Biden as president, or I thought this was like a Trump thing or whatever. But it seems as if you track the history of the DHS and all of this stuff, it just sort of increases through every presidency. Like, it doesn't matter who it is, because the private contractors and stuff like that are just playing both sides of the coin, and whoever gets in, they just lobby more. So like, how did that play out? I mean, how does this stuff look under Democratic presidents, if people, have a hard time imagining that?
Yeah, people should go back to the 1995 State of the Union address by Bill Clinton and listen to the part on immigration. And then, or maybe you could take that little section on immigration and play it to a friend and ask, or just read it to a friend so they don't hear the voice, and just ask them.
For too long we have let immigrants cross our borders. It was something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It almost sounds like Trump with the Clinton voice, right?
We've been treated very unfairly by our neighbors.
Yep. And he talks also about how I wish I could do the imitation. I would really do. But how
you want to give it a try?
No, I'll just.
It's a safe space. None of us are good at it. It's okay.
Yeah, Andrew wasn't good at it.
Excuse me. I will have you know.
Yeah, I would, but I'll just maul it so badly. But
That's
anyhow,
fair.
We'd all be better than Clive Owen, who is playing him right now. Not to go on a huge tangent, but I saw John Lithgow play Bill Clinton live. He made no attempt to do the impression at all, and now Clive Owen is doing him on TV, and he's actually doing a wonderful job without even trying to lean into it too much. Anyway,
John Lithgow was playing
a 5-part breakdown of Clive Owen over the next month.
Let's get back to the interview.
Yes,
go on.
Yeah, well, anyhow, I would now recommend going and listening to it. But he does talk about how no other administration has built up the Border Patrol. No other administration has put all this money into it. When you're looking at walls, some of the first, there were chain link fences before along the U.S.-Mexico border, but the first kind of walls that were going up in urban areas, that's where they first started. Like Nogales, San Diego, El Paso, Brownsville, those areas. The whole idea was that you build up the border in cities that were traditional places where people crossed. And then what was implemented was a strategy called prevention through deterrence. So the whole idea of the deterrence was like the desert in Arizona where I live. It would just be too desolate and dangerous and deadly to cross. They even, in the first Border Patrol memo, they even use the words mortal danger. By closing off the cities, forcing people into the deserts, it would cause a mortal danger, and that would be the deterrent. And so that whole strategy, which is the same exact strategy we have today, was started under the Bill Clinton administration in 1994.
And is it fair to say that around that time, NAFTA was a big contributing factor to an influx of immigration and immigration from Mexico and Latin America becoming a bigger part of American politics?
Yes, huge.
Okay.
Doris Meisner, and she was the commissioner of the Immigration and Naturalization Service. So this is pre-DHS, right? And she got up in front of she was in a congressional hearing, I believe it was 1992, and she said NAFTA. She got up. I'm paraphrasing, of course. Can you do her imitation? I doubt it.
Don't challenge him.
I'm Doris.
But she got up in front of Congress and said NAFTA is going to cause displacement and migration from Mexico, like knowing that Mexican farmers are going to be undermined by NAFTA, and that we need to then harden our borders because of it. And it was like a year later that Operation Hold the Line, Operation Gatekeeper, Operation Safeguard, all these operations from the Bill Clinton administration, much that I was just describing, just got implemented. And that's when he went to the 1995 State of the Union. And from then on, pretty much through DHS, this whole idea of prevention through deterrence and budgets going up and up and up, and more and more Border Patrol agents and more walls and more technologies all coming together has been the modus operandi of the border. And through the George W. Bush administration was particularly because that was the 9/11. That increase of budgets was it was dramatic, but it continued in the Obama administration. Of course, continued with Trump, and it seems like Biden is just he's got the baton. He has some nice humanitarian, he has the humanitarian rhetoric going pretty nicely. But the same systems that have been in place for all these years and have been increasing and fortifying seem to be still going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy that his fan base or his whatever, the following, the culture war stuff you were reading online about him when he was running versus Trump was kids in cages. We have to stop Trump because of kids in cages and stuff. And it's just kind of baffling to look at the raw numbers and see that he's taking in more money than even the Trump administration was being offered. It just seems like every president, they start offering more and more money, and it becomes more and more profitable to do things like keep kids in cages. So I don't know how we square that.
If it's not too much of a tangent, just succinctly, because I am curious about this. We've talked about the 90s buildup of the border before, and the rise of militarization after 9/11. But out of curiosity, what was kind of the role of the border police before, like, the last 30 years? Like, what were they doing down there before we decided to make, like, robot dogs that chase you down in the desert?
Well, you could look and say there was a tendency towards militarization going back to the 70s, and that's particularly getting some training from U.S. military and using military surplus equipment on the border and that sort of thing. So you could see it starting to trickle in the 70s. But before that, it was more, I guess, you know how the Trump administration used to use that term catch and release?
Yeah, like
you remember that? How
you're hunting for
it was
deer.
Always, yeah, it's a ridiculous term. I even hate to use it, but he used it. But every time he used it, the whole idea of what he was talking about, catch and release, is that people would cross the border, they'd get caught by the Border Patrol, and then the Border Patrol would release them, would drive them back to if they got caught coming from Mexico, they just drive them back to the port of entry and not even formally deport people. They would be released. There's a difference between being released and formally deported. The formally deported, you get that on your record. And when you get that on your record, it triggers other things if you get caught again. So that it used to be like that. People across the border was there was Border Patrol. There was Border Patrol since 1924, but it was really actually, there was a lot of freedom of movement. People would cross back and forth constantly. There was a lot of cyclical immigration where people came up from Mexico or Central America as well and would come in and work certain seasons and then go back. So that more circular migration patterns were happening, which have stopped. They've been completely disrupted by the militarized borders. Now it's like really hard to go back and go back and forth. It's just really difficult and deadly. So it comes from another kind of new other space that has really, I mean, the militarization of the border and the drastic aspects of it. It's really recent. It's a very recent phenomenon. It's funny how it's often brought up like, oh, it's always just been like this. And it's like, no, it hasn't. It really hasn't been like this.
Right. People like to think of it as like was like an invented tradition or whatever. Like it's a thing that you can point to and go, well, I don't know why. It's just a fact of life. Like you have to sort of have borders around your country and this has been this way forever. When in reality, I think what helps people understand maybe why this is such a specific blip in time and like a moment is looking at, like, to me, it looks like there's two factors, right? There's the climate stuff, which people are talking about a lot with, Haiti, people are fleeing, an earthquake. And then in Guatemala, there's been this sort of periodic thing back and forth between droughts and hurricanes. And then also, though, I think really the big missing piece of the conversation for probably Americans a lot of the time is the neoliberal accumulation stuff that went around with NAFTA in the 90s, because like, if you look at like what was going on with the Zapatistas and shit like that in Mexico around NAFTA and in response to NAFTA, there's this kind of like group of, rural, like workers and, indigenous population that were saying, if you read your fucking theory and you read Marx, you know about this like need for a surplus population. There's sort of pointing out this situation they've been fucked into, which is, there's no one with a gun to your head if you're a Mexican worker that says you have to work in a maquila for like $7 a day or whatever. But there are all these de facto factors that are like by negative pushing you in there. So like the fact that you can't leave the space, you can't immigrate to, the country that is literally got its arm over the border, like pulling this money back in. And also you can't really work anywhere else because all the labor is dried up. And then eventually, they bring in the military and, so you have to work in the factory or whatever. Those are related to this country. That is not just because Mexico is not doing as good of a job as America. It's because American business is being conducted in Mexico. So to me, when I look at that, I'm, I don't see this as like if you vote for the Democrats next time, they'll stop doing that. That's a product, the byproduct of like the overall system of, accumulation and distribution that we operate under in this country.
There's also, I mean, in terms of just raw neoliberalism, the thing you were bringing up earlier about the budgets bloating and the camps that keep popping up, and more money moving over to that part of the economy is just a bloating sector of essentially like military production, right? Like this is an exciting new thing there's political will for. If you make prisons, you can make a lot of money getting contracts for this. And so it's going to continue under both administrations because it's just, putting stuff in the growth machine, man.
Right. That's the other like part of the equation that just sort of like perfectly works in harmony with this is that there's this industry that is perfectly situated to benefit off of this, which is like private defense contractors and stuff like that. People literally like came home from American wars and then went, well, I still need to sell all this shit. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I read that you went to like these border security expos and saw like new, ghost drones and pepper ball grenades and shit like that they're selling. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I've been doing this research on these expos and conventions and the border industry and border immigration industry for a while now. And going to these conventions have been, even though I've been to many of them, I've been to them around the world. I've been to a lot of them in the United States, but I've also been to in Paris and Tel Aviv and in Mexico City. So just kind of following this kind of global Homeland Security industry. And it's just, when you go to these places, it's a visual of this intense, like, science fiction, like, industry that's just all compressed into like a convention hall. And you go in there and you see like drones like sitting on these red carpets and robots crawling around on the floor and biometric systems like facial recognition taking your pictures, and you see yourself on a thermal energy on a screen, and you see like an a balloon like with their camera on you up on the rafters, and all these like banners from companies like Lockheed Martin or Raytheon or Elbit Systems. They're like all hanging up there, and it's like going into a crystal ball of the future of like what's being deployed on the borders, and in these conventions, I've been able to see like kind of interaction between like the Homeland Security officials and the private industry, and how they come together and talk, and they have these meetings together, and it's like watching this arm of the, I guess it was the military industrial complex, but it's now this arm of it that I call the border and immigration industrial complex is skyrocketed, right? Like there's been from 2008 to 2020, I believe there was I'm remembering, I think there's 105,000 private contracts given by CBP and ICE to that totaled $55 billion, which if you take the total budgets from 1975 to 2002 of the total cumulative budgets of border and immigration enforcement, it was $52 billion. So there's more given to private companies in the last 12 years than there was in 27 whole years. That shows how much this has grown as well. And then these companies, they just have all kinds of influence. Of course, they want more contracts. Once you get a contract for something, you get a maintenance contract for that thing. You have like all this lobbying ability in Washington. You can get behind closed doors. You can go talk to politicians in the appropriations or places where they dole out the budgets. You can, and then of course the campaign contributions. And that this will be my last point. I was even surprised that it went so much in favor of Biden when we were doing the number crunching for the 2020 election and comparing the border industry's campaign contributions from Trump to Biden. I had to do it like 3 times to make sure that I was seeing these figures correctly. Like I thought it would be kind of even because that's how they normally are, like 50-50, maybe 52-48 in favor of Trump. You know, it is betting on both sides, right? Like you win no matter what.
Yeah, it's like gambling. Like you cover your bet. You bet on black, and then also
exactly.
whatever you're betting on or whatever.
Yeah, you don't lose.
Well, are there different sort of factions of the sector? Because I'm just reading now that apparently Biden has a clause with the new contracts that the migrant detention facilities, the contractors there have to speak Spanish and some of them Haitian Creole. And I know that smart border technology, the makers of that contributed to Biden quite heavily. Is there some difference there between different types of contractors are betting on the Republicans and different ones are betting on the Democrats?
Yeah. So the private prison contractors, and the main ones are Core Civic and Geo Group. And Core Civic used to be Corrections Corporation of America. People might CCA. I noticed that they really contribute heavily to Republicans, like 90 to 10%. And that's the one that I saw. Whoa, that's a considerable amount, going to the Republicans. But still, at the same time, like the Biden administration, I just looked at some of Geo Group and Core Civic's contracts. They're getting them. If you start looking at the last 8 months, I saw a contract for detention centers in, I think, Louisiana, Texas, and I can't remember where else. There's like 4 of them that I saw, and they're happening. The contracts are happening. The detention centers are getting contracted. They have I think they have a budget for, I can't remember how many people. It's something like 35,000 people per day that they can detain. And this is usually through ICE. So people who are detained are detained because they're in deportation hearings. And so people often fight their deportation hearings and that sort of thing. But those sort of, this is the clincher. You can make, the last figure I saw, and I bet it's even higher now, was $124 per day per bed that the private company gets. So every person in there, they get, well, it's whether they're there or not, they're contracted for a certain amount of people, so they get $124 per day per person.
That is kind of an interesting point that you brought up, Anders, because like, of course, the old school private prison people are gonna know the Republicans are gonna buy their stuff, and then the smart wall stuff seems like it's a thing that the Democrats lead with, where it's like somehow more humane, like when you shock your dog with an electric thing, you're like, no, it's more humane or whatever. But it's just,
like humane war, yeah.
But like, because I was reading about
the Disney Channel original movie Smart House,
yeah,
but for the border.
I was reading about one of those like biothermal scanner things they have now that apparently it can tell what religion you are, or like make at least an estimation or whatever. Do you know anything about that, Todd?
I don't know. I have not. One, it doesn't surprise me. 2, no, I haven't heard.
I think it was just going off of like
biothermal scanner. Jeez,
tattoos and stuff like that or whatever.
Is it like a Facebook quiz?
I don't know.
How would you know that?
I mean, I guess it was maybe that it figures out who you are and then it just like grabs that, like from your fucking Facebook. I don't know. I didn't make it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There is a lot of technology like that coming where they bust into your social media and then they do profiles on you. And like if you're flying from some place outside the United States to the United States and something about you raises a red flag with somebody in CBP, they know everyone who's coming in, and they can bust into your they have this program software, and you can get in and they like build up profiles and see where you've gone and where you haven't gone, and like, should we follow up with this person or not?
Right, they can see what
technology like that.
We can see what Harry Potter house you're in from your quizzes that you took and stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Speaking of the politicians and the people that are sort of being lobbied by these private contractors and stuff like that, who then become points for influence, I want to talk a little bit about Biden's choice for Secretary of DHS, this guy Alejandro Mayorkas, because when he was announced back when Biden was sort of announcing, the wokest, most diverse, etc. cabinet of all time, and that was sort of the line on it. This guy was being sort of being presented as like the first Latinx, head of DHS, and I'm being crass about this. I'm Mexican, so I'm going to allow myself a little bit of leeway here, but like he's a blue-eyed Cuban guy, and he looks
like me with a shaved head.
Yeah.
He looks like
he shaves his head, and
it's like Lex Luthor.
He's also like an immigrant. When he was 1 year old, but when he was 1 year old, he came from Cuba, which has a certain background, people that come from Cuba, and so he's to play himself off as this sort of like Latinx, like DHS head or whatever, is kind of misleading. I think he's white and he's conservative and he has probably anti-immigration views. But can you tell us about this guy? Do you know about his background?
Oh, I don't know that much about Mayorkas. I do, besides all the stuff that you just brought up. I know that he was a DHS bureaucrat. He was working with the Obama administration in DHS,
mm-hmm.
and then he after that, when Trump was in office, he got this job at a law firm called Wilmer Hale, I believe. And the one thing I really looked into when his time at Wilmer Hale is that he disclosed right before his confirmation hearing that he had made $3 million from a whole list of like 5 or 6 companies. And when you look at the companies, I saw, there's Northrop Grumman is one of them, and they're a big border contractor. And then the other one was Leidos, another big border contractor. In fact, Leidos just got a huge, almost $1 billion contract with CBP. So he discloses that he made $3.3 million or something like that from these contracts or from these companies. And then here he is as head of DHS with these, at least 2 of these companies are companies that he'll have the power to wield tremendous influence on whether he contracts them or not. And so that's what I've really looked at with Mayorkas more than anything. His connections there, his those sorts of which makes me just look at him very skeptically, and I want to look at him very carefully, and even watching like how he's doing, conducting his own business, conducting business, or conducting himself as Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. He seems like, just like you were saying, he seems like he's saying all the correct things. He makes sure he says everything correctly. They sound nice. But in reality, what's going on is the same sort of border apparatus, a violent border apparatus that you see so clearly in Del Rio with the Haitians right now. That sort of violence that you see there, it just happened to be that this was on camera. This is day-to-day stuff, right? It could be horses with like the whips, the reins, the whips. It could be the pepper balls that you're just talking about. It could be concussion grenades. It could be bullets. It could be like agents on ATVs. It could be agents in big vehicles. It could be agents like in helicopters that regularly come down and dust. What they do is dust, quote unquote, people who are walking through the desert and makes them scatter. Sometimes run over the sides of cliffs or run into cactus patches.
Does it just mean like shooting a machine gun off or something?
It's like they come down with they find somebody usually with the quote unquote humane smart border technology, right?
Right.
They find out where people are walking, and then they'll send a helicopter. The helicopter will come, and then it'll find the people, and then it will lower down. So the propellers, they call it dusting, because the propellers, when they're low, the dust comes up, and it scares the crap out of everyone. Everyone just flees in every which way. And you're in the desert. Like, most people don't even know like which way is which. So you're dependent on a guide. And everyone, like, people get lost. People run over cliffs. You fall into a cactus. You step on a rattlesnake. I mean, there's 100 things that could happen.
Yeah.
This is like the practices that are happening every day, right? Of violence of the same, in the same way that we see in Del Rio. And this is exactly what's going on with Mayorkas as well. It's like, when you get caught, when it's televised, then you have to you'll get on television and you'll say the correct things.
Right, Biden was saying, this is not who we are, or whatever. But it's like,
right.
Who are we? Right. What do you mean? This is happening all the time.
Right, it is who we are, right?
We have a Google Doc open that says what we're about, and it's on it. Yeah. What do you think about the fact they're getting rid of the horses? I mean, that's what de Blasio ran on for mayor. That's got to be good, right?
They're getting rid of the horses. That's one of the most, I think, to me, it's the most Democrat thing that could possibly be done, right? Like,
is it actually going to be any better on ATVs? I know maybe you've looked into this a little bit more.
It kind of reminded me of that meme you see of the Pawn Star guys, where the guy's going, the best I can do, get rid of the horses. Like,
get rid of the horses.
It's not the point at all.
And then they make a big deal of it, right? It's all over the place. Oh, they're banning the horses.
Right.
It's just so...
No word on the whips, as far as I have heard.
Were the horses biting people or something? It was one of the... I didn't see the whole clip. I don't know.
It looked pretty tranquil. The horse was actually kind of like pissed off at what the guy on top of him was doing.
Yeah.
It's not the
You're gonna
horse's
ask me.
fault.
I couldn't interview them and ask them that. But.
Keep the horse.
This is
whisperer,
a
okay.
extreme dumb guy line of thinking, but every time I see some kind of atrocity on a horse, you have to think like the horse would never have gone along with this.
Oh, I know. They don't want cops on their backs, you know?
Right. But there's like 2,000, 3,000 years of history of horses
I know, it's so sad. They're having a bad
co-signing
year.
some stuff.
Everyone's taking their medicine.
Stop associating with horses if you're listening at home.
Well, the reason I brought up that Mayorkas is Cuban is I think that is kind of a Cuban immigrant himself. Is I think it's something kind of interesting about
An immigrant.
right.
His family fled fled Castro.
Yeah. Well, is during that time, during like when well, I guess that was not that time, but I was reading about Reagan. I was reading about when Reagan was in office and how
Here we go again.
inviting he was for certain Cuban populations to be let into the country. While now you've got this thing where people's eyes are on this population of Haitians that are trying to make it through this process of following coyotes and shit like that to cross the desert into this country to escape from things that are, largely byproducts of this country, and how historically Haitians have been like bottom of the list in terms of who gets allowed in, while Cubans have been at the top. So like Mayorkas, just to me, he has all these conflicts of interest. If you like look under a microscope a little bit more closely, like, this is historically, he's not going to have a good disposition towards these populations. And like, I don't know. So what's going on with Haiti right now? Can you enlighten us on like a little, why are people fleeing Haiti right now and coming to the U.S.? Is it just climate change? Is it, a compounded history of fucking all this horrible shit the United States has done, the cholera stuff and the economic stuff? I mean, what exactly is going on down there right now?
Yeah, I can attempt to give like a general picture of what I think. I think it's compounding issues for sure. Like hearing some interviews with people, and I'm actually gonna write a piece this week for the Border Chronicle. That's going to be called, I think, the U.S. Haitian border. It's going to go into like all the different ways that the U.S. border is, like what's going on in Del Rio, but also how it's extended right up to the shores of Haiti, right? With Coast Guard cutters, like in the 2010 earthquake that was devastating, killed more than 200,000 people in Haiti. The U.S. sent Coast Guard cutters and sent a jet, jumbo Air Force jet over Haiti with somebody talking in the intercom, or the ambassador speaking in Creole but translating from English from a message from the Department of Homeland Security of the United States saying not to leave. If you leave, you'll be interdicted and sent back. So this whole idea of like this border harassment of Haitians has a long history and extends almost right up to their source. But I would say that there's so many, I would like look at the long history of U.S. policy and U.S. The different interactions with the U.S. in Haiti, from economic. You have similar things like with NAFTA, with the corn and NAFTA, and just flooding the Mexican market with subsidized corn from huge U.S. corporations going against small farmers. Same in Haiti, except with rice. And this again goes back to Bill Clinton. He apologized for this, giving some Arkansas companies, allowing them to export their rice to Haiti and then undermining Haitian small farmers. So you have the neoliberal economic model that's straitjacketed the island, along with this huge history of you get different presidents who have if there's any semblance of a more progressive policy or a policy that's not beholden to the United States, all of a sudden the iron fist will come in and people will be ousted. There's so many compounding issues, and climate change is just the newest one that's really intensifying. Haiti is considered one of the most vulnerable islands or vulnerable countries in the world to weather-related disasters. So it's not only earthquakes; it's these hurricanes that just keep pounding, the sea level rise, the storm surges, the flooding, and so it was actually ranked number one with Myanmar as a top country for disaster. And then you just
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say one thing that I kind of noticed reading about this that I thought was interesting is that they'll often present climate change as like this new thing and we're adapting to it as it happens or whatever like that. But if you read into, I mean, how much obviously everyone's known about it for so long, something I did not really understand until I was reading a little bit of your work is that the DHS sort of has a plan in advance of climate disaster for, deporting people and stuff like that. I mean, the answer is not how do we make this a situation better to where these people's lives can, flourish and they can get into the country and stuff like that safely. It's in like response to it. Like there's a premeditation going on for securing the border in response to something like a hurricane or something like that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, you could just go look at the DHS Climate Action Plan, and you can see they write it for themselves. They talk about in this action plan the droughts in Central America and how it's displacing people, and that people are going to come north. And then, but when you through a DHS perspective, there's just no talk about any sort of status or anything. The climate refugee status, as some people say. There's no talk about that, no debate about that. Instead, they go to their 5-point mission, which is all about border and immigration enforcement and cybersecurity and counterterrorism, and they put it in there, and it becomes we're going to prepare our borders for mass migrations. And in the Caribbean, there's a biannual joint task force exercise done by DHS and Southcom, which is Southern Command, U.S. military, that they go in and they interdict. They practice interdicting people fleeing different islands in the Caribbean, presumably because of disaster situations. And so these things are practiced. They're the kind of assessments you see. Even the latest, these assessments have been going on forever. Like a Pentagon commissioned assessment from 2003 says the United States, in a worst case scenario, they're looking at a worst case scenario, says that the United States has to build up defensive fortresses to stop unwanted starving immigrants coming from Latin America or the Caribbean. And then, and I looked at the annual threat assessment. It's a threat assessment that comes out every year from the National Directorate of the Intelligence Community. Anyhow, I counted how many times it said the word migration, and it said it 18 times. And I looked primarily at climate change and migration, and it was just all over the place. And they were predicting, like, they didn't talk about Haiti, and they could have. I think they really could have. But they talked a lot about Guatemala and Honduras and the droughts and the hurricanes and how that's all converging. And instead of putting it as, oh, here's a potential humanitarian disaster that we should, try to alleviate or fit or help out on, it's more like, oh no, this is a threat. The threat is that these people, quote unquote, are going to come up to our border, right? And that's pretty much the client. It's called a climate security narrative, and that narrative is that the climate event, the hurricane, the drought, the storm surge, the flood, that's what's more dangerous is what people do after the event. So what do people do in the aftermath? And included in that is as much as I've seen looking at tons of assessments now, it's migration is very much a part of it. It's called people like it's put like, oh, it's going to destabilize. It's going to cause political instability. It's going to cause conflict. All these ways of looking at immigration rather than looking at, oh, people are leaving because there's a disaster and maybe there's another way we can go about things.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are quick to say that the government doesn't have a plan for climate change, which isn't true. The parts of our government that are functional have books and books and memos printed out on how to deal with climate change. It's just in the ways that are profitable. Scaling back production is not profitable. Building a big, scary wall and new prison camps is. And so there's a whole philosophy called like Gunboat America people look into, where you can just have a big fortress we live in and then everybody else has to get in here. And it's the de facto agreed on method we're using moving forward until it's challenged.
I mean, if they want to take this whole gunboat security state infrastructure and use it on fossil fuel CEOs, that could be helpful, but seems like...
Do you know how easy it would be to keep like 12 people out of America?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Oh my
We
goodness.
could do that.
We could put them in a volcano prison.
We could use the whips on them. That'd be cool. The
But
horses.
instead, yeah, we're beating up on the people who are already being impacted by this and just making their lives even more miserable. When it's not like, to just go back for a second, when 1924 is when we started keeping track of the border a little more. But before that, was there a huge problem of immigrants coming and stealing jobs, or German spies and saboteurs sneaking in and bombing places, or was it a pretty functional society despite having more or less open borders?
Oh, I mean, it was they had other laws before, like most famously was the Chinese Exclusion Act,
Right.
And really, when you look at the origins of the 1924 the Border Patrol, besides if you look at the immigration laws that were passed, oh my God, they're just really they're saturated with xenophobia, and there's all kinds of stuff in there.
And it was eugenic too, right? We did an episode on this, but they were worried about the national germplasm, which meant gene pool. But it wasn't really based on like economic rationality so much. Is that fair?
No, in fact, there was a lot of Chinese labor that was coming in and building like the Southern Pacific Railroad. In the early 1920s, that's what it was built. It was Chinese. It was again, the labor, the working class that were actually building infrastructure in the country. That was the focus of, whatever the immigration apparatus is. Even with the Chinese Exclusion Act, there was not nearly the resources put to any of this that there are now. Just a fraction. And even though Border Patrol started in 1924, it was like 100 agents on the southern border and 100 agents on the northern border. So they actually had equal at first. And it really was a slow growth for a long time. It got up to 4,000 by 1994. Now it's 21,000. It just took. So you could even argue, even after the Border Patrol was created, and even though these laws, xenophobic laws, were being passed, that people just still came in and out very easily over the border. And it wasn't really until the 90s operations that it became really, really difficult to do so.
Yeah, it's interesting how
threats to our germplasm have never been more severe.
Well, I mean, they use weird shit like that to justify it's a smokescreen for what they're actually sort of up to here, which is just sort of feeding this weird industrial complex. But like, whether it be, the germplasm thing way back in the 1920s, or like now they're using this like Title 42 thing to scare you with today's germs of, are you a person who worries about COVID a lot? Well, okay, we can attach this as a narrative to this. They're going to bring in COVID or whatever to round out. Yeah, another thing that was making me think about was this sort of justification they use to float this stuff these days, which I don't think is really demonstrably true if you look back to the past as we are right now, which is that there's like this threat of, too many people coming across the border and then like inflating the economy or something like that, or there being this crisis of too many people coming into the country, which, the origins of these organizations don't seem to even point to them being in response to that. So it's weird that they're being propped up as like a, that's their purpose right now or whatever. But with that being said, let's sort of round out on the concept of open borders. Do we think, it's possible to get back to at this point? What do we think it would look like? I don't know. In general, let's discuss. What do you think?
Yeah, I think one thing I think about a lot now is like when that term is brought up, open borders, the automatic thought is like, oh, people coming to the border, people coming for a variety of reasons, often poor, and what I think also needs to be thought of is there is an open border policy, and it's not for it's for like corporations. Like NAFTA was very much an open border policy for like it got rid of any sort of restrictions on companies being able to cross the border, like in all kinds of companies. And you can see these companies like NAFTA. Now there's CAFTA, the Central American Free Trade Agreement. These companies can go to any place, set up shop, start a mine, put cyanide in water, like people like cause havoc, cause displacement. And there's no border patrol stopping these companies, right? There's no border patrol stopping. The U.S. military has 800 bases all around the world, right? There's no border patrol like or ICE that goes in and like if a company is like contaminating water, they don't go round up the company and then put them in detention and then deport them, right? So it's the way that it's set up. The whole idea of open borders, closed borders is set up in a way that you're always thinking about, like in a certain way, while in another way it's totally already happening, right? Like the open borders already exist.
That's a good point.
So like thinking of in that sense, it's interesting to hear all the different arguments that are, oh, people cross the border, they'll do this, they'll bring down this, they'll cause this, and all those arguments you could argue like, oh, from these these practices of corporations going to other countries and raising havoc. That's what they're doing. They're taking over. They're like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like the very sort of accusations that are usually leveled against, that are anti-immigrant and definitely against any sort of open borders. They all have this like, and all of them are, there's a criminal element, there's a drag down the wages element, there's all these different, and there's all kinds of studies and reports that debunk just about every single one of those arguments. But the thing that I want to that I would stress is that like nobody knows what's going on the border. Like nobody, I mean by nobody I mean like the majority of the country, the United States, they don't know what's going on. They don't, like most people in 2016 when Trump was saying I'm going to build this big wall, most people didn't know that there already was a wall. Most people don't know that these budgets have gone up from 1.5 billion to 25 billion annual budgets over the last 25 years. Most people don't know all the stuff that's going on. They don't know about the private industry. And if people, I think, began to unpack that and look at it and look at these budgets and look at, start to really think about what security really means, what well-being really means. Like if things, even if you just look at the domestic United States, like isn't it insecure for a kid to drink like contaminated water in Flint, Michigan? Or isn't it like insecure, like if there's not enough affordable housing and you're homeless, right? You don't have a roof over your head, seems to me like would be something that would be secure, something that would be something about security. But yet we're constantly told with the border thing is that, oh, there's this on the other side of this big wall, there's people that are out to get you, that they're going to come steal something from you. They're going to steal your job. They're going to steal this, that, and so it seems to me like you can view open borders in many different ways, but one way you can view it is like, why are we spending $25 billion on ICE and CBP? It's ridiculous. Like, why can't, if you just you take that money and start funneling into other things, it could be just way more, it could be just way better for human well-being in general. I mean, you can go into a lot, but that sort of, like looking at it from that way, is one way to look at it. And then one other way is that when we're looking at some of the major global issues we have, even COVID, the pandemic, the idea that it can be solved by one nation state is ridiculous, right? Or climate change, like, oh, we're going to solve this, or the United States needs to lead. It's like, really, no, you don't. You're like the biggest historic emitter ever, right? And so what you got to do is cooperate and start breaking down borders that are put up between other countries, and not just from a governmental level, but at a grassroots level. And I think like those sorts of the globe is calling for a new reorganization, and you can look at climate, I think, as the best indicator of this. The things are going to change. Mass amounts of people are going to be displaced. We got to think about things in different ways, and the way that it's organized now with different countries and these borders and the border, like we were just talking about the borders being a solution, quote unquote, to climate change. Wrong, right? That's no solution. What the real solution is people coming together and trying to figure things out. And you're no longer like, oh, I'm in this country, you're in that country. It's more like we're coming together. And so I really think there's a certain border busting that needs to happen for the very survival of humanity in this planet if we think about moving forward.
Right, and I think sometimes we forget that in a lot of cases, people don't necessarily want to come here, right? It's a very treacherous sort of path, very extremely risky, and it's hard to leave the place you're from.
It sucks here, too.
Right, it's a terrible country.
The place sucks. People aren't coming here because it's great. That's a big myth.
Right.
It's like, because we're so awesome. No, it's destroying the place that you live in, and then you have to come here.
Yeah, so we should, instead of spending all these resources militarizing the border, we can think about how to make it so people have a real choice. They should be allowed to go wherever they want, but they should also have a decent quality of life in their. I don't want to say homeland or fatherland, but in their place of origin.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know we got other stuff to get to, and we've taken up a lot of your time, so I appreciate you talking to us. Todd Miller, where can my listeners find you?
My website, toddmillerwriter.com, I think. Yeah, Todd Miller Writer is my website. You can find me. And the Border Chronicle, just look it up. It's on Substack. We just got this off the ground earlier this month, and on my website I have my books and stuff if anyone's interested.
Cool. Well,
thank you for having me. This is a great conversation.
Yeah, for
thanks
sure.
For coming on.
All that stuff will be linked in the show notes as per usual. Cool. All right. Thank you very much, Todd.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do plugs and get out of here. What do you guys have?
At Anders Lee here on Twitter, Dursley on Instagram, Redacted Tonight, and if you are available tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, there's going to be a webinar that I'm really encouraging everyone to attend. This is sponsored by the DSA International Committee for a Just Global Recovery, Debt Solidarity in the Left case for special drawing rights, which is a wonky-sounding term for basically the ability to create money. Countries should be able to develop their own currency instead of going into debt, further into debt, to recover from COVID. We will put a link in the show notes. We're going to have Dr. Jayati Ghosh, who's a professor of economics, as well as Alex Main from the Center for Economic and Policy Research. That's Tuesday, September 28th, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We might have a recording put up after the fact, and this is also going to be connected to a phone bank to get these countries special drawing rights so they can actually recover from COVID without going into debt. So 4 p.m. Eastern Time, Tuesday, and the link will be in the show notes.
Drawing rights now. Get a Bitcoin. That's the face of Bhaskar Sankara on it.
It's not
that's your money now.
It's not Bitcoin. It's
all of the Jacobin editors are going to have a coin.
It's not Bitcoin. It's better.
Better than Bitcoin. You heard it here first, folks.
Yep.
It's not Bitcoin. It's better. That's the slogan.
Uh-huh.
Like it's a cereal.
SDRs.
Advertising is so important. And with that said, you can follow all of my advertising on Twitter at Patak Test Kitchen. And if I have a webinar, I'll put it there. And you'll see my webinar there. And that's going to be it for my plugs. That's simple and it's easy and we all love it.
I don't have any webinars. My album's going to be out streaming on on November 5th, my new one. And what we just put our live show up on the Patreon, which I did 20 minutes of even newer stand-up on. So you can see that, and also our live show about 9/11 Eve. If you sign up for our Patreon, it's pretty good. It's like an hour of comedy. I think we did a pretty good job on it. That's it. I don't have anything else to plug. I'm not leaving the house. Well, Halloween's coming. After that, I'm not leaving the house.
Jake's house.
Yeah, come to my house. It's finished.
Cool.